another episode. Today we're going to take a look at a few different things, specifically 7 things, and the 7 things are fives. So we are going to take a look at the history and the different variations of all the models that call themselves the fives in their various incarnations. So we're going to start back in 1997, and this is when the frog skin line was in full swing, and at that point we had M-frames, we had jackets, and we had frog skins. And don't think of frog skins as like the collector's one we see now, or even the classic ones. True, they kicked it off, but then they started having everything that didn't have unobtainium and had a lower price point was sort of in this frog skin category. And then everything that was kind of sport related, had unobtainium ear socks, was in a jacket. And then those waters got real muddy real fast. And I have a whole other video where I kind of outline how all those fit into their own categories, but then how they're also going to change into something else too. So I actually need to redo my database to account for all that because I still have a lot of the old classifications, and I think I'm just going to put those as footnotes and get them into the new active, iconic, and lifestyle. There's a whole bunch of mess I have to sort out there. All right, so let's go back to the 90s. These are the original fives, and a lot of the glasses in the frog skin line had numbers. So we had the 4s, the 5s, the 10s, and the 20s. There were some issues with the 20s where they couldn't actually call them that after a while, so since they had the Roman numerals as the logos for all these, those just went by the XX or the double X or however you want to say that. And actually, if you look at the box designs, you can see that the earlier ones actually said 20 and then they just completely took that off. So these are very small. Also being in the early or mid 90s, they used the old O-matter formula. So these things are very brittle. If you can hear that, that sounds a lot different than this. Very subtle, but basically this is a very brittle plastic at this point, so as such I will not be putting these on. If you remember my moon review, I was handling them with great care because I don't want these to break because I really don't want to re-buy these. So it's a much smaller fit. I think if I did put this on, I'd probably stress it out and I'd hear some cracks, and I wouldn't want to risk that. So that stayed by itself for a few years. Again, we had the other frog skin lines. Okay, so jumping forward a few years, Oakley debuted their new O-matter formula. And all of their glasses at that time started using this new formula, but they took the chance to update a lot of models. So the old eye jacket became the new eye jacket, the new M frame, and then there was also the O-frame goggle and things like that. A lot of the wires changed over too, so they used that opportunity to kind of revise and update everything in their line. Not everything happened at once, so a lot of things happened in 99, a lot of things also happened in 2000, like the wires, and then the 5s actually didn't get updated until 2001. So now we have the 5s 2.0. Very similar to the original. The orbitals are a little different. They are certainly not compatible as far as lenses go. And the ear stems are very similar. They have sort of this pocketed, dimpled effect just for grip. Since they don't have any ear socks, they kind of use that just for a little bit of texture. And it's only on the outside too, so really it's just kind of for effect. So as such, they do have the true metal icon versus the old molded icon. And I will wear these because they are actually pretty comfortable. So this is the crystal red with black iridium model. And, with the new O-matter formula, they're a lot more flexible, so you don't have to run the risk of breaking it as often. They do have the breakaway stems and everything like that. So a lot of the modern things that we'd expect from a pair of glasses this has. All right, so now we move forward a couple more years. This was a pretty popular model, but then we moved over to the 5s 3.0. And again, it still had the iconic elliptical icon, but it had a much more square format. And this is, the gas skin came out in 2005, so in 2006, a lot of things were sort of borrowing from that. So once the gas skin was released, a lot of these fluid models sort of didn't happen as much anymore. So we had a lot of very square things, even if they didn't have the square O. So this is the crystal blue with black iridium. As you see, I like the crystal frames. This was actually borrowed from Dragon Optical. They had something called a liquid jewel frame, and they sort of borrowed a lot of that dye to make this frame too. So right around the time they acquired them, they started borrowing a couple of the frame colors for this. So I feel like this one doesn't fit as securely. This one, you know, the 2.0 has the nice wrap right there where the stem kind of goes around your head, whereas these sort of have the problem where they're just a lot more straight, and much like the gas can, which really didn't fit me at all, the lack of wrap really just sort of is noticeable. You put them on, they feel like if you let down, they wouldn't fall off, but they just don't feel like they grip your head as much as the old 2.0. The same year, we also got the 5s squared, and this is basically the same exact thing as the 3.0, just with a square icon. And it makes sense because it does have sort of the squarer accents and frame contours. It just has the Square-O logo. So as such, it will feel exactly the same when you put it on. This is the White Tiger, which is sort of a throwback to the old White Tiger with black iridium. And this one has a matte frame, whereas this one has sort of like a glossy finish to it. So not exactly the same. The pattern's a little different too. But it was nice to see tiger print actually show up when one hadn't shown up since the original batch in the 90s on like the racing jacket and straight jacket and things like that. Alright, so before I move into the future, I do want to kind of step back. In 2003, we did have the Halfpipe Division, which only came out with 2 models. We had the Half Pint, which was sort of an iJacket 3.0 or like a full frame half jacket, which was meant for kids. And this one was pretty tiny. That one is I can't even put it on without it bowing out. That one did come with this youth leash kit, but the XS5s actually had holes in the ear stems, and you could buy these separately and then put them on there. So basically you could have almost something like a croaky. This one I believe I can put on, so let me give that a try here. Yeah. And, you know, with the new all-matter formula, these are 2003, so they do have that. It will stretch quite nicely. And to be honest, these aren't half bad. I wouldn't wear these purposely because they are a little bit smaller, but unlike the Half Pint, which is really tiny, these things are a little bit bigger, and, you know, if you don't have a huge head like me, you can probably wear these fairly comfortably. So again, these are the crystal blue with black iridium. Not the same as the liquid jewel that came from Dragon Optical, so there is a slight difference because they did have crystal blue frames for a while, but when the 3.0 came out and borrowed the frame, it was noticeably different. This one has like a really deep blue, this one's more of like a lighter. Alright, so let's continue moving forward. So now we have 2009, and this is the 5's 4.0. Why did this come out? This came out because people didn't like the 3.0 and the squared. They wanted the old 2.0 back. So the 4.0 was created with the icon again, and some of the fluid designs that we've seen around the time. So the sort of like a recessed area in the ear stem. It still does sort of have the squarish orbitals, not as much as the 2.0, but a lot of the contours on the ear stem kind of resemble the older 2.0. And I don't think it was received too well. This is a custom, so this is not a stock model. But I do feel like it fits a little bit better. It does feel a little chunkier, whereas the stems and the orbitals here are very thin and wide. This one is a little bit more cylindrical, so it kind of feels like it hugs your face a little bit more. It doesn't look like the ear stems wrap all that much more, and truth be told, they don't, but for some reason, just when you put it on, it just feels like it hugs your face a little bit better. I don't know whether it's just slightly smaller or if there's just something going on there, but it does feel a little bit more secure. Alright, so now we move to this guy here, and you're saying to yourself, wait, that's just the 5 squared. Sort of. This came out 2008, this came out 2013. What's the difference? The difference is it has nose pieces. So for the first time, this actually has, in all of this has something that will actually grip your face with the patented unobtainium. No ear socks, of course, but it does have the nose pad. So I think technically, we talked about the jackets versus frog skins and how that kind of got muddied. At this point, if something has absolutely no unobtainium, it's going to be a lifestyle model. If it has even, an insert of unobtainium, like a lot of the women's models have, it becomes part of the active or the iconic line. So I think this actually kind of moves into that area where it's not a pure lifestyle piece. So putting it on, this is the King's Camo version. And it does have sort of the same issues with the 5 squared and the 5 3.0, where it doesn't feel like it really grips your head all that well. But those two nose pads do grip your nose, so as you dip forward, it doesn't feel like it's going to slide off in the same way. Now, I'm sure these wouldn't slide off, but you just sort of get that feeling where you're kind of like a little bit guarded and wondering if this is actually going to stay on your face or not. And those two nose pieces really help. Alright, so I wanted to do this video actually quite a while ago, because when I realized that there was another 5, and I kind of looked at my collection and realized I had all of the 5s, I wanted to do this overview of all of them. But the problem is all they had was black frames, white frames, and then a bronze. And then the lens options were just black iridium gray, nothing terribly interesting. There was a MotoGP option, which had a ruby lens, and I was tempted to get that, but it was always on my back burner. And then, aside from those initial offerings, they really hadn't updated the model in ever. And that was 2013, so here we are, 2016. And suddenly, out of the blue, they come up with a King's Camo model, so Camo, I'm in. And a colorway that I like, I'm in. A VR28 lens. Alright, so I'm sold. And the nice thing is that all of these have a very low price point. They're all around like 110, 120. Some of the earlier ones were like 85. Obviously nowhere now because the scalpers just like to take advantage of us. But, these are just a very nice low price point model that you can pick up fairly easily. And then, of course, if you wait for DE or Vault sales, you can probably get them a little cheaper too. So, I really like these. Obviously, if I went out and got most of them, then there's something here. It sort of is a nice place in Oakley's history for an evolution of something that hadn't changed much, but they sort of changed things that they thought people might like and then backtracked to certain points and, eventually settled on something that's a pretty solid release. So there's my quick overview. Again, 5's original, or 1.0, 5's 2.0, 3.0, 5 squared, 5's 4.0, new 5 squared, and the XS5. Thank you.